To Market Buzz. I'm Greg Schnell, the Canadian technician and host of the Market Buzz. Each show, we do a deep dive into different indexes using weekly charts and to see what is happening on a long time frame basis. Please follow me on Twitter at Schnell Investor, and you can also find my blogs on gregschnell.com as well as StockCharts.com. So, having a little bit of a shake this morning. It is options expiration day, so I'm wondering how we fare coming out of that. I'll show you a little bit on the charts, but today we're going to cover off gold, as I mentioned on Wednesday, and the global indexes. So I don't have much courage here for an upside move. I've expressed it as I have the courage of a kitten here, and it's probably a kitten on a hot tin roof. Anyway, lots going on that makes me very, very cautious. My internal data calculations all say everything's still fine. So the only thing I can recommend is just make sure you keep your stops at a very close level and make sure that if they get hit, it just lets you go to cash or to however you want to treat the market. Make sure you find some way to protect yourself because we are in literally uncharted, well, they're now charted territories, but previously uncharted territories. So things like bond yields plummeting, which means bond prices higher. Gold stocks are starting to take off. Currency charts are breaking big long-term trends on both the euro and the yen. And the dollar index got pretty much to 100 and is now trying to bounce away from that today. So we'll be watching that quite closely. But there's been a huge move into the US dollar here in the last couple of weeks. So it's been quite phenomenal to see the rotation. So I want to start here. This is updating every 5 seconds here as a user, a StockCharts Pro user. You can get it, so it'll update every 5 seconds. But you can see yesterday we had that big slice down, the rally back up, made it to about 50% or so of the move, and then we're plummeting again. Now we're sitting at about the 20-day moving average, and you can see my PPO momentum indicator is going below zero. So that's kind of concerning. If we look down at some of the other indexes here, the CompQ, the IWM representing the small caps, and the TSX. TSX is still holding this uptrend gently here, but natural gas has popped up. Oil dipped down, and I just read that there was some attack on Saudi oil facilities. So we'll keep watching on how oil behaves here. Gold is jumping to the upside today. Same with the bonds jumping. Bond price is higher, yields lower, and the dollar, you can see this big uptrend that's been going on for a couple of weeks already, all of a sudden cracking this morning and kind of wiping out 2 weeks of gains in the dollar. So perhaps we're going to get some easing of the pressure that the US dollar was starting to provide as everybody moved into that. So I want to cover that off a little bit today. Here is the S&P 500, just an hourly chart. That was the same one I just showed you. Zoomed in on 10 days. But this was options expiration Friday last month, and you can see that was when we had the gap down and then the move lower in the week following that. Then we had the crazy rally out of there. And now we're trying to hold this black line level again heading into options expiration Friday. So keep an eye. You'll also notice that the PPO is going below zero here, as this all starts to break down. So whether or not it's a little one, I don't know. I will say this, that the moves that we have seen in things like Apple, and I think I've got a tab for it here, this big run in Apple that's been going on since August, sideways for the last month. And I think more importantly now is, it's really been on the move. If we go look at the NASDAQ 100, let's just refresh this chart. But we only have 10 out of the 100 stocks in positive territory. So, and while it is rolling over, if you look at the names that are holding us up, it's not Microsoft, Amazon, Apple, that kind of stuff. It's a bunch of different stuff. Costco's in here, that kind of thing. So anyway, just be careful out there. I think there's lots of opportunity for a downside move here. Not trying to predict a downside move, just trying to avoid participating in one. Looking at the charts like the 5-year, you can see this big uptrend in 5-year yields going back to the 2013 lows when QE kind of started. that was QE Infinity, gave us that big run up, and then we pulled back down. Recently, we've had QE kick back in again. It started to rally, and now it doesn't even seem to be holding the rally. So I don't really like the shape of this momentum trend. It's pretty severe. So all of those things are giving me reasons to be a little more cautious. When I look through to go see things like, well, whatever, let's just quickly roll through the rest of the world here. We don't have to spend a lot of time, but the point I want to make is just the shape of each country's charts. These charts have the the US dollar conversion in them, so it's not as clear as I'd like it to be. I just don't have today's data on the charts on the specific country indexes. So when we look at this chart here, you see Australia trending up here. If this chart's going to start to break, that would be a big deal. Canada, same thing. So again, these commodity runs have been huge. Now we've all seen gold breaking out. We're going to cover that off in just a second. I think the bigger issue here, we took out a prior high, and now it looks like we're giving that back right away with a lot lower momentum. So Canadian markets could be equally weak. Here's Sweden, and one thing, I've got the black line on here, that's the S&P 500. These two move pretty closely together, but look at the momentum trend in Sweden. Same thing, where we've got lower highs and lower lows, and we're rolling over just above zero now on the daily chart. So all of these are starting to show more breakdown potential. Here's Germany over the last 4 months. And again, this has the weight of the US dollar move on it. So it's not one-to-one. Germany actually went up and hit new highs on their indexes when you don't have the currency effect in there. But you can see on all of these charts, these momentum trends on a daily basis are starting to weaken and go below zero. So that isn't kind of the price action that we see in a big bullish move. And I think we all know that we're pretty much extended. So from my perspective, those are serious concerns. I don't think I've shown the situation for the currencies recently, so maybe I'll just jump over and show you things like the US dollar. So here's the channel the US dollar's been in. We're getting up against this 100 level, and you can see on the momentum trend on the PPO, we're coming right up against a level where we might expect some resistance. Again, this trend line's been working for 4 years, but we're starting to break it on the euro and the yen. So as we break through all of these trend lines, it's a pretty important place on the chart. Here's a bigger view of the dollar going back to 2010. And what we see here is this 97.5 level has been important, but there was 2 stalls in the dollar run right up around 100, and we got there not quite 99.78 on yesterday's close. So anyway, if there was a place to expect a little bit of chatter, it would be right around this 100 level, and then see if we've got enough power to get through. This is a zoom in on the daily chart, and you can just see we kind of busted through those prior highs, and the momentum surge has been huge. So really broke out quickly to the upside. This is the UUP, so this is the intraday version of the dollar. And what we see here is this is rolling over, wiping out all of the price action for the past week. I think I might have said the last 2 weeks, but this is wiping out a couple of days of price action. And we'd have to get down here to wipe out a couple of weeks. So we've got a little bit of room to the downside, but I would say that this uptrend very clearly is in place, and so now we'll watch to see if it starts to dissipate. The euro, the big chart that we had here, was this breakdown below this long trend line, and as you can see, we're trying to make a hammer candle today. And what's a hammer candle? It's when you break below the prior week and you put in you open the market, you test lower, and you end up closing higher at the top of the bar, and so it looks like a hammer. If I put on the shape of this chart, change it to a candlestick, you'll see what I mean. So it looks like a hammer candle where we've got a big head on it. And so perhaps that's finally a reversal after 8 weeks of plummeting here on the euro. And if we look at a big euro trend line in terms of momentum, we're right at it. So this would be a place to watch very closely to see if the euro can finally bounce here. Going over to the Japanese yen, what we see on this chart is the same thing. We're breaking support. Now, what's really interesting is gold is taking off to the upside as the yen is breaking down. And typically the two have moved very much together, but recently you'll start to see gold has started to accelerate away from the Japanese yen. And even in here, while the yen continues lower, all of a sudden gold has changed. So really since the beginning of the year or late December, we've started to see a change in behavior of some of the commodities compared to the currencies, and the normal relationships that we have seen in the past are all of a sudden changing. So usually when you start to get changes in relationships, there's something bigger going on. And so that's what we really need to watch for. The Canadian dollar is trying to hold this long trend line. So far it's held. That's really good. This brown line is oil. And so if the Canadian dollar is going to start to let go, we'd probably see oil get shaken out here as well. So keep watching oil. I think that one's a pretty good clue for whether or not the globe thinks we can get out of this virus melee in a short period of time here. All of these things are just very compressed, and we're at the inflection points if they were going to inflect. So try and stay aware of the potential for the markets to break big here. The other thing on, oh, there's one more currency I just want to show you. So the Aussie dollar recently hit 11-year lows, and you can see this week it did it again. So it just keeps banging lower and lower and lower, suggesting weak demand for commodities. And this is, the orange line is copper here. There's a couple of charts, long-term trends in copper, and they're like 17 years long. And what we see is that trend line is breaking on the China market, on the euro, and on the charts of copper. And so when we see big correlations like that all starting to give out, it just tells us to be aware of the potential for a major trend break. And I'll just show you the copper chart here. This is copper on a week-to-week basis. Here's the big picture on copper. What we see is this long trend line coming up from 2002 to now. And if I change the words to the euro up here, we're going to see the same thing. One more dollar. So here's 2002, and we're just starting to break these trend lines. So it's this situation where all of a sudden we're starting to see big trends around the world changing. And if that continues, obviously this is a major inflection point. And when we draw these trend lines on the euro, you know, going back, this is the day the common currency started as cash. And then we've got this trend line here, just to open it up. So we've got, call it mid 2008. You start to see the euro break away here in 2014. You might remember oil collapsed in September of 2014. And so the euro broke down, and now here we're starting another level of breakdown. So all of these to me suggest, if nothing else, just being aware of a bigger potential change. I thought I hit that button. Okay, frozen here. Save changes? No, there. Okay, so anyway, when we see these big correlations, and we can also use the Shanghai here just to make sure everybody has seen that, and I don't want to use the coronavirus as a marker for us, but we've got on the China market, so we had that trend line. Even if you start to open it down to this trend here, one of the things we briefly broke it, now we're trying to hold it. And again, as we go forward, we just want to watch and see what happens. But if we start to see all of these correlations start to come true, you know, a big change in China was in end of 2007, 2015 also marked a stock market top for the US market. So the real question is, what if we start to break down here again? Anyway, that's what we're starting to watch for as all of these charts kind of line up. I'm just going to cancel out of here. As all these charts line up at the same time, if that inflection point is going to happen, we need to be aware of it. And of course, the big inflection point that we've seen in the last week has been gold breaking out. And so we're going to take a quick commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to jump into the gold charts. Okay, we're back with gold. And what I want to talk about here, first of all, this is the gold miners. And one of the things that's changed here for the gold miners this week, and again, I'm using Nugget here I could use GLD, GDX, whatever. The point is that we had this uptrend that we were trying to hold on the bottom side here, and we could also run it back this way. But what we were focused on was trying to see, is the market going to be able to break out to the upside or downside? And we really didn't know. PPO sitting right at 0. Well, this is pretty clearly trying to head to the top side. And so when we see that change in behavior, that's pretty important. Now, on this chart list here, maybe I'll just go grab GLD, or actually I'll grab GDX, which is the same gold miners. You don't see the drift that you see down in the Nugget chart I just showed. So because that is reset every day as a 3 times levered play, that chart has a lot more downward tilt. But what we see here is gold miners breaking through the prior high, and over here on the far left, as you might imagine, if we start to go through this 3106, this is going to be a pretty big level. So let's just put a level line on the chart around 31 and just say, if we're starting to blow through here, this is going to be a pretty important place. So stay tuned to the gold charts. I think there might be something there for all of us. They have started to move. Some of them have started to move very quickly. I'm going to cancel this out here too. But it's that change that we're starting to see. And as we start to go through here, that's why we want to cover off gold today. Yeah, so can't talk and think at the same time, obviously. And so what I want to cover off now is just jumping into these charts and go through them. This chart is a Canadian stock called Aura Minerals, and I've watched it make this move from 25 to 100 without participating. But this is the weekly volume, 25,000 shares a week. So 5,000 shares a day just is a little too thin for trading for me. So somebody else can have that chart. Northern Dynasty Minerals is actually a copper play up in Alaska. And we can just see it had a big super surge last week, so it started to turn up. So that's helpful. These are sorted by stocks that have had the biggest move over the last month. And here's Enliva Corporation, why that one's in here, specialty retailers, I have no idea. Rupert Resources, this is supposed to be my gold trading list, so somehow I must have saved a stock in a wrong chart list, my mistake. Rupert Resources, when we see this big downtrend going on for 2 years, I'm not really too interested in getting on the upside of that. But here's Caledonia Mining breaking out to new 5-year highs and consolidating nicely and now starting to push the envelope higher. That looks pretty good. Grand Columbia Gold, this one had been sitting sideways for 6 months and had a super surge this week, up 20%. This arc looks like it's just getting started to me. So this is pretty nice chart. And here's Kinross Gold, one of the big miners that we've probably heard about over the years. And, let's just take a few seconds here and annotate. Well, I can't annotate from the screen because I have my chart settings different. Let me jump in here. What I want to show is just, the breakout to new all-time highs here is pretty apparent. We had a big uptrend and we were starting to wonder again, was it going to fail or break out? Well, now it definitely looks like it's going to fail. And we also have a nice setup here where the PPO has come down and reset and can run a long way. So if these charts are all going to start to break out, we're just at the early edge of this wedge. So I particularly like that sort of setup. When we go to Eldorado Gold, this one hasn't been a great performer for a while, but look at the move it had this week, up 40%. Just a huge pop to the upside. So really large. So again, this is 1 week. Here's Lundin Gold. This one broke out a couple weeks ago and it just keeps powering higher at a more moderate pace. It's only up 3% this week. And then when we go here, I'm just going to turn off this auto sizing and that way I can annotate the chart while we go. So here's Kinross Gold, the US side. And we see that same phenomena where it's breaking out to new all-time highs. And here's Yamana Gold. This is a pretty nice pop above kind of a 3-year resistance layer, and off it goes. And again, these large caps can end up getting quite a bit of the volume because all of a sudden institutions start to move in. So you've got a volume this week of 15 million shares. We still got a whole day to go. Average is 17 million, so it's not huge. But what we'd like to see, obviously, is that this starts to perk up with more pressure. Semifo has been a terrible stock for many, many years, but it's even starting to move now. And again, we've got PPO buy signals on pretty much every one of these charts. Torex Gold, this one has been trying to climb gently. It's consolidated since last August, which is really, gold went on a run. Now it's consolidated. This one looks like it wants to start to break out too. DRD Gold pushing to the upside here. Pretty nice linear move. You can just draw a trend line under that and make sure you stay above it. Junior gold miner bulls. So this is the 3X junior gold miner. So very, very volatile. So the move this week is 30% or $22 on a $70 item. So again, not for the weak at heart, but these ones really can fly. Yamana, this is the US listing. The other one was the Canadian. So popping to the upside, I think a pretty nice chart. And one of the things I would encourage you to do is to try and make sure that you have your chart lists all set up in advance. So as you start to get something, whatever, 5G, ESG, gold, copper, industrial metals, oil, try to have your chart lists all set up so that when you get the opportunity, when something starts to break out, you don't have to start assembling a chart list. It's all there. A stock like this had run up really nicely in 2016, fell for a whole year, has been gently wandering its way higher, but all of a sudden it looks like it's got moxie and could start to pop to the upside here. So a break through 16, perhaps that brings the prior high in play around 27. Not a bad move, considering it's not a tech stock. Paramount Gold and Silver, I think that's pretty much a defined downtrend, and all of a sudden we're starting to change the trend. Look at the PPO up above zero for the first time in 2 years, and really very close to the highest level has been at in 3 years. So something's changing in momentum. For Vista Gold, choppy sideways so far, but again, everything started to pop this week, and so I don't want to I'd rather focus on the stock starting to move. Here's Polaris Infrastructure, and this one's made a nice move. Wouldn't take much to get through prior highs. That would be a big deal. Corvus Gold was a big mover back in 2017-18, consolidating for a year, and looks like it's getting all fired up. PPO just around zero, scooter ranking back above 75. All of these things point to positive. Teranga Gold, this one is now popping big time. It's up 11% on the week, or $1 on a $7 stock, so that was big. GT Gold, consolidating sideways, not my favorite. Here's Alamos Gold. This one has been trying to trend up for the last year, and all of a sudden we're starting to see the move. So again, these things are just getting their PPOs above zero. Usually that's a nice time to enter. Barrick Gold, the elephant in the room, is moving 8% this week, breaking out to a new 3-year high, and it wouldn't take much to get through all-time highs. This is the Canadian listing. The US listing is now under the ticker symbol GOLD rather than ABX. So here's Leagold Mining, and this one's obviously breaking out to new 3-year highs. Wesdome, this one's been lovely, just a beautiful uptrend for 2 years. Just came out with another drill report the other day. Apparently it was pretty good. I don't analyze those, but from the Twitter sphere, you can find some pretty nice information on that. Goldfields, again, this one's been trending up nicely, consolidating here, and all of a sudden starting to break out to new 5-year highs. Superior Gold, consolidating here. It's an 80-cent stock. We'll just move along. But the point I want to make on these is they're all starting to turn up, and I don't think you're too late to the party in a lot of cases. These names are just getting going. So here's Sentiment, Egypt, and this one's 18-month highs, pretty nice. 3 times long gold. This is the gold bullion as opposed to the gold miners, and you can see the breakout to new 5-year highs. So that's big. Dolly Varden Silver trending down. Some of the silver companies haven't responded yet. We'd like to see them join the party. That typically is a little bit better. Here's Sabanier, and this one's just been trending up nicely. Look at how smooth this uptrend has been. A couple of days pullback here for 2 or 3 weeks, and now it looks like it's ready to resume its assault. So that's a pretty nice trend. Here's Barrick Gold. You can see the ticker symbol changed here. And one thing I should point out on these charts is you can always just click on this banner and change it right there. So I'm going to change it from 0370 to gold, Barrick Gold. And so anyway, this stock's breaking out to new 3-year highs. What's not to like? Alamos Gold, again, a gentle uptrend. It's been, the pullback from last August was a little steep, but all of a sudden it looks ready to fire up. And again, this one can have pretty high beta where it starts to run quite quickly. Pan American Silver, this one's breaking out to new all-time highs here. Wheaton Precious Minerals, again, breaking out of a 7-month base. So hopefully I'm giving you an idea of these stocks just starting to crack out from the bases they were in. Leagold Mining, this is over-the-counter U.S. market, and you can just see a breakout to $3 here, but it IPO'd around $2.50, or $2. So all of a sudden this thing is taken off. That looks good. This is the U.S. listing for Wesdome, WDOFF. Again, very nice uptrend. Nugget, this is the one we started talking about, but you can see this downtrend here starting to pop. And again, these things move fast, so be careful if you're trading the inverse, or if you're trading the 3x or 2x. In commodities, they can move fast on their own, so starting to add real leverage can bite both ways. Silvercrest Minerals breaking out to new all-time highs here. This was I'll call it the equivalent of a 20-cent stock. It might have even been that low back then. It's now up in the $10 level. So really a nice push to all-time highs here. Pan American Silver, nice pop this week, breaking out to new all-time highs. B2 Gold Corp, again, a lot of these are listed on both sides of the market, so I'm just trying to show you both ticker symbols. But when you look at B2 Gold, gentle uptrend here. Hasn't been fast moving, but up 13% in the week. That's pretty good. Eurasian Minerals, this one really a consolidation for a long period of time, and then around December started to move, and it looks like it's got a little bit more room to go. Silvercrest, this is the US listing for that same stock, SVCMF, and a really, really pleasant uptrend. So with that, I'm going to leave it there. I do want to point out that as these stocks start to take off, it's important that you're relatively early. I mean, the stock is 1 week off its 200-day moving average or 40-week moving average. Look at the volume that's coming in here. So really a nice potential upside. And hopefully you can find names like that. So go and get yourself set up in the gold sector. I think there's some opportunities there, and then just keep your stops tight underneath it. If gold stops going up, perhaps we're getting something else coming through the market. But the point I want to make here is we have options expiration. When we look at options expiration last month, it was kind of a volatile period for the week after. That's when we had the Dow down 600 the following week. So we've really started to crack here. And on the 60-minute rolling over, when we roll out to the weekly charts, it doesn't look like much yet. The one thing I would say is, we're quite extended in terms of momentum. I've covered that off many times. Thanks, everybody, for joining me. Have a great weekend, and we will see you next Wednesday. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.